Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we're going to go over some of the issues that the engineer picked up on the Alfarrari. Alright guys, welcome back, and those watching last week will know that I was trying to get the Alfarrari ready for the engineers meeting, which was this morning. And we had an interesting day. It was overall quite positive. If you missed the previous episode, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and please think about subscribing. It does help out the channel. The meeting with the engineer this morning, actually, it was very extensive. He's very thorough, and it's quite interesting listening to some of the comments. There were lots of people who were concerned that it must be a massive nanny state here in Australia, and you know, basically wherever you're from, some places there, you basically do what you like and nobody cares. There are other places like, sounds like in Europe and things like that, where there is no snowball's chance in hell that this car is ever going to hit the road. So there is a whole range across the globe of what's allowed and what's not, and everybody has their own rules, which is what I'm working with, and I'm working with the rules that I have where I am, and thankfully, everything I've seen so far means that this should be able to be registered for the road, and I am on the right path. There are a few things that I need to address, and the engineer was actually quite helpful. He went through and address them and work with me to try and find solutions, which is quite good. I've come across some engineers I've used in the past who seem to revel in just being difficult, and that doesn't help anybody. But having an engineer that's actually willing to work with you and go, okay, well, this is an issue. Maybe we can try this to fix it, or try that, and that's all we need. Like as car modifiers, if somebody can help you along the way and give you the right idea, that's it. Most of my issues really seem to be around clearance. As many of you know, this engine is very tight, and I need to have at least 10 millimeters of clearance all the way around the car, the engine, from the body. And there's still places there isn't. So I knew that, and that's what he picked me up on. That was one of the biggest real issues. There are a few places where the bolts aren't quite long enough, so they should have any nuts on the end of the bolts. They should have a few threads coming out. Things like my engine mount bolts are slightly too short, so I probably need bolts that are like 10 mil longer, so that they just protrude a little bit past the nylock nut. He picked me up on a few things where there aren't spring washers, where there should be spring washers. Most of it's just safety related stuff. Like, ultimately, the main things they're looking for is to make sure that I'm safe on the road and I'm not going to kill myself or anybody else. We've still got to go through and do the full bump steer testing, but that stuff again can be sorted out. He's happy with that engine in that car. He checked my seatbelt mounts because I've put retractable seatbelts in it, so he needs to make sure they're safe. So again, almost all of this is just safety related. It's not, I don't personally see it as being a nanny state. Some of the things he wanted to know were, like with my brakes, is the master cylinder big enough to hold enough fluid so that if you use all of the brake pads, the master cylinder is not going to go dry. That sounds like safety to me, yeah. A demister is a big one. Even on race cars here, they need to have a windscreen demister. So that was something that I have, and it's all fine. But most of the rest of it is good. So let's start getting the car up in the air now and talk about some of these things and show you where they are. All right, so we're down under the Alfarrari, and some of the places that they found were issues is that I sort of already had a bit of an idea about. Where I bolted my steering rack on, this is all very tight in through here, so that all has to be clearance enough so that I can, yeah, as I said, have 10 mil between the engine and the steering rack. So there, that is all tight in there. There is also up here on the steering, when my steering turns, this bolt gets close to this ear. Now, I've already clearanced this ear a bit, but it gets close up the top, up a little bit further. So that's another thing that needs to be done. Another one of the things he picked up is that the steering shaft up here needs to be a little bit further into that coupling because it's on the minimum. I just had a look, it's probably about 12 mm. It's got to be 1.5 times its diameter. So I'll just double check that and make sure that is the case. The next thing is the exhaust. Now, currently with my current setup, I only have the cats, which I was happy with, and these mufflers at the back. We did a test, and the test needs to be measured at 3/4 of the RPM where the car makes its maximum power. So in this case, it makes maximum power at redline, or as far as Ferrari is concerned, it's 8,500, so that's where we can measure it, which means I had to rev it to 6,300 RPM, and it had to be 1 metre away on a 45-degree angle from the back of the exhaust, and it needs to be under 96 decibels. At the moment, it's 101, so that's a lot. It's very loud, and I knew it was loud. My switchable exhaust will need to be disabled. It's not legal, or the only way it's legal to have a switchable exhaust is as long as the loud mode is still less than that 96 decibels. I have found a way to remedy it. I found a space, one of the only spaces left under the car. This is sort of sitting underneath the back seat of the car, and in this spot here I can fit 2 extra mufflers, one on either side, and hopefully that will bring the sound down to a tolerable level. I'm definitely getting older and definitely over super loud cars because it gets tired fast. And to be honest, I'm also not super happy with the sound of this exhaust, so if I can improve that as well, all the better. So first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to remove this steering rack, and to get a bit more shaft into this knuckle, I'm going to remake the mounts to tilt the steering rack a little bit more vertical. At the moment it's leaning forward slightly. It will make the clearance closer for that ear of the engine in there, but I will trim that off. But I need to remake this lower mount here and be able to twist the knuckle around a bit further, and I think I might be able to get a whole bunch of these issues sorted out in one fell swoop. So it was quite difficult to get in and shave back this ear. I used a combination of sanding discs, the die grinder and angle grinder just to get in there and make enough clearance for what I needed. All right, so you can see that there is plenty of thread engagement in that shaft onto the spline, and when I turn the wheel, there's now more than 10 mil all the way through the join back here. So we have cleared the steering shaft. That is one of the big issues sorted out. I went overkill on the brackets for the steering rack, so just a bit of work with a die grinder makes short work of that. There's plenty of meat on the bone to give me some clearance. All right, another thing that was picked up is that I didn't have spring washers on my brake caliper bolts, so that's a simple fix. I've got some spring washers here. Just go through and replace these bolts with spring washers, and that is another job marked off my list. One of the last things that was on his list that he picked up that I missed was this brake splitter here. Needs a heat shield on this brake line and over itself. So I start with a cardboard template, and I just cut a hole in it so I could sit it over the top of the bolt that I was going to attach it to. Mark it out on a piece of sheet metal and just trim and bend and sort of just keep tweaking it until it's the right shape for what I need. Alright, So I've got my little heat shield basically finished up. It's a bit of an odd shape. It just sort of kept trimming and tweaking and sort of marking and stuff like that. Because I've got a couple of bigger gaps in here, I'm going to use the MIG instead of using the TIG, just because it's better to fill those sort of things. Give it a little coat of paint and mark another thing off of the list. All right, the next thing that needs to be addressed is another clearance issue, and that is this one, which is the headers here come too close to the cross member here. The other thing is engine mount bolt there is too close to the ear, and the whole thing is that ear of the suspension there is too close to the engine. So all of those other clearance issues were relatively easy to tackle. That header, after waking up in the middle of the night last night, and I was up for a couple of hours just going through it in my head, which often is the way with me. I find sleeping on a problem is often the best way, or not sleeping. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I've realised the only solution is I'm going to have to pull the engine again. I don't really want to have to pull the engine, but it's the only way to fix it properly and to get in there, fix that engine mount and fix the header clearance to the body. We'll see how well I've made everything so that it can be removed relatively easily. I did extend one of those headers, and while it was in the car, I changed where the V-band clamp was, and that may end up being an issue for me, getting the engine out with that on, so I may have to cut it off again. We'll just see when we get there, but for the time being, there's other things I can get onto, and we can pull that out probably next week. Yay. All right, the next thing that I have known about for quite some time, but I haven't bothered fixing yet because it wasn't a high priority, is this alternator bracket sits too low. So if you watched a long time ago, I built this bash plate for the front to protect the engine, and that bolts on about there like that. But this bracket is massive overkill. It's far heavier than it needs to be, and I think I can do a better job now. This bracket has this adjuster on it, but I've mounted it on this side. I can flip that adjustment around and have it on this end, so I don't need all this reinforcing. It'll make more sense once I start cutting it up. All right, so I've trimmed this down and got rid of all of that reinforcing, and my bash plate now fits. Before, I had this adjuster in the back, and it was fixed at this end, so that's where it needed the strength. But I didn't even think about it at the time. If I put it in the other way around, so then it's pushing the bracket forward, not pulling it, it will keep the pressure on from this end, pushing the bracket. Is that going to work? That's not going to work. I just realised that if I just put a place here, the bolt's just going to keep slipping through. It needs something pushing on this end of the bolt, not on this side. So my whole plan is not going to work. So I just cut that all off for nothing. But it was sticking down too low, it was too heavy, and I can actually do a new little support piece here, and also this end, the adjuster was sticking out too far, so that if I try to lift the engine up, I have to take the alternator off to get the engine out. So it's still worthwhile, and I can redo the adjuster so that the bolt is really close to the end. It'll fit on the alternator, and hopefully we can lift the engine out with the alternator on. That would be nice. All right, definitely still not super pretty, but it's much prettier than it was. Much slimmer line, and still got the reinforcing. So that is another job off of the list. So let's just refit the bash plate and see how it goes. All right, so I spent most of the afternoon doing lots of little bits and pieces that are still needed tidying up. I've been putting in the hinges for the rear quarter windows that I never put in the first time I installed the window, and just little bits and pieces. One of the last things though I want to check, and it's troubling me quite a bit, is the issue of the engine not being able to keep the temperature. So I have the electric water pump in this car and the twin thermofans with the shroud, and I've actually got some rubber flaps on the back of the shroud so that at idle they're supposed to suck closed, and then at a higher speed when the air's coming through it can actually get extra airflow. They don't seem to be cooling. I'm hoping that I've just messed things up and got the polarity wrong, but sticking my hand down behind the fans, it feels like they're blowing in the right direction. I just want to do the paper test on the front of the radiator now, and just see whether it is actually sucking the piece of paper to the front of the radiator, meaning that it is sucking the airflow through the radiator the way it's supposed to, and then we'll go from there. The fans are working correctly, which is not a good sign, because that means that even with the monster radiator I've got in there and the thermofans with the shroud, it's just not working efficiently enough. Now on the dyno, with the big dyno fan that they blast in the front of it, this thing was sticking to about 70 degrees. So it can be cooled at speed with airflow. But at idle, it's not working, and the airflow is just not enough, and it's getting hot. So that is something I need to work on. Now, one of the things that I don't like is that the rubber flaps that I have should suck closed in theory at idle, because the fans are sucking in from behind the shroud, and they should be sort of sucking those rubber flaps closed, but they flutter. So I'm wondering whether it's not efficient enough. Maybe I need a bit more space with the shroud. Anybody who has any real knowledge of this sort of stuff would be I'd definitely listen to. I'm scratching my head, and I don't really understand why it's not cooling and not doing what it's supposed to. That is really frustrating. In any case, that is all I'm going to get done this week. I didn't want to start pulling the engine just yet, but that is my task next week, is pulling the engine again. I was having a look at it, and I don't think it's actually going to be as bad as what I was picturing in my head, because a lot of the reassembly of the engine, a lot of the bits can stay connected to the engine. I've done it in such a way that hopefully the quick disconnects work reasonably well, and I can get it in and out without disassembling everything, and it shouldn't be a complete nightmare, but we'll see. But that's next week. Right now, I think it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 2015, Ferrari released its successor to the 458 with the 488. Reverting back to its old naming strategy, 488 is the capacity of one cylinder, whereas the 458 reflected the 4.5 litre V8. Although the 488 is based on the same platform as its predecessors, it has a completely new engine. Gone is the Ferrari Maserati F136 V8 from the 458. The 488 uses the smaller F154, first seen in the California T. It is a 3.9 litre V8 with twin turbos, making 660 horsepower, which is 100 horsepower more than the 458. Although initially appearing similar to the 458, the aerodynamics have been greatly improved, with 50% more downforce, while greatly reducing aerodynamic drag. The underbody vortex generators reduce air pressure beneath the car, and along with the larger diffuser, work together to create ground effect while reducing drag. The large side intakes funnel air from the top portion to the turbos, while the lower openings funnel air through the car to exit beside the tail lights. All of this combines to create air pressure behind the car and to reduce drag.
All right, so the engineering was quite good. That means that, yes, I can work towards things and get all the things done that he requires so that we can get the Alfarrari on the road. Pulling the engine out is not going to be fun.
I offered to help, but you were like, I'll just do it by myself.
We'll see. Yeah, join me next week when I pull the engine out again. Woohoo!
But I think like your viewers enjoy repetitive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of repetition.
Well, I think maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome.
You've been here too long and you're just used
like,
to
let's
me
watch
going
him pull the
over
engine
and
out
over and over again.
Again. But like, it's your motto.
Yes.
Like, subscribe, help
Yep.
Jeff out on Patreon if you want to watch the videos day early with no ads.
Yep.
Yeah, let's read your comments and
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
See you guys.
Bye. Gone is the Ferrari Maserati F138 V8. F136 V8 from the F534.
What?
Aerodynamics have been greatly improved sorry, it's a bit hard to talk. And along with the larger diffuser, work together to create
Ground effect.
ground effect. Diffuser.
Yes.
I said diffuser.
Yes.
That's weird.
You are weird.
Side intakes funnel air from the top portion to the lower turbo region.
The lower turbo region.
Yes. Windy.